Okay, welcome to the show. Today we're going to do it a little bit differently. I took some Lucy the other day and thought about some things. And, number one, it made me feel a lot better. I really needed the release. Set and setting are a thing. Mindset. It took me a while to get my mindset right. Probably about 2 weeks. I knew I needed to do it, and then it took me until I knew I had a nice day. I woke up feeling good, and I was like, okay, today's the day. And I went skating and skated about 6 miles on my longboard down a big long trail that goes along a river here where I live. And what I kind of figured out was, I'm working on things right now. I'm in transition. I'm looking at moving from where I'm at to another area that's a little bit more affordable, but still, and has more, jobs and things like that available. I think a lot of people are doing that right now. And as I'm doing that, I am, jobless, broke, maybe a little bit angry, And so I've had this channel here for probably 6 months or something like that now. And YouTube doesn't really give me very much play. And one of the little things that I realized on my journey yesterday was I've decided it doesn't matter if anyone is going to listen. I'm just going to yell at the sky, sort of, even if it's just for the therapy, even if nobody listens, because I do feel like most of the talking heads that you get, even if it's on the, YouTube space, the social space, the internet space, the X space, whatever it is, even though you're getting some voices over there, like a lot of those people are essentially shills. They're all paid, they're all getting, I promise you, you find out like Tim Pool, there's supposedly backing for Russian money behind him. He doesn't talk about it very much. He just says, oh no, it didn't happen. Jordan Peterson, obviously a little bit corrupted once he got super involved with Ben Shapiro. What was he corrupted by with Ben Shapiro? Well, now we have to be in 100% support of anything that a certain tribe in a certain little country does. And no, we don't necessarily have to be supportive of everything. Jordan Peterson is, I think, a prime example of what happens to people when they start taking themselves too seriously. And he really fell from the light in my eyes. I mean, there are a bunch of different things. Obviously, he went and struggled with an addiction to benzos while he was telling everybody to clean up their room and have their life together. His daughter is divorced and has her struggles. So no matter how much he talks about, Christian ideology and the family, and you should really go out there and just, pick yourself up by the bootstraps, and it's going to be hard. It's going to be very difficult, but then maybe you make something of yourself and you get a lady, and it's like, well, what are you going to do? Get a lady like Michaela that leaves you? I mean, come on, what are we doing here? And it's like that with them all the way down the line. Like, I do appreciate the voice and the alternate voices on the left and the right, but, a lot of that ends up like, who really needs to or thinks that somebody like Destiny has a worthwhile opinion on anything? And like that guy ends up on Piers Morgan. Addressing some things as we go forward. A lot of what happens in our kind of modern dialectic, and it is a dialectic, left, right, whatever you want to call it, black, white, all those things. A lot of the issue is that somewhere in there we started using like a word blanketly, calling someone something, hate, oh, that's hateful, or that's, racist, or that's whatever. And so I think it'd be good to kind of step back from that, because now that there's spaces like Twitter, and there was already 4chan and things like that, people have started to go pretty hard. You had the Nick Fuenteses of the world becoming more popular. And so with those voices that are coming out that do definitely have a tone of hate, and they use pejorative words, and we're talking about, our favorite song by Kanye is that HH song. And so things are definitely shifting, and they're not shifting in a good direction. Like, it's clearly not logical. Like, if there was a group of people that were deeply involved in the political discussion, and those people were telling you that reptilians from Zeta Reticuli shapeshift and actually run everything, and they were serious about it in every way, and they said we need to genocide all of the people that we think are the reptilians, you would think those people are crazy. Well, you can substitute that for pretty much any outgroup for any outgroup. Okay, that's what's really going on here. Is there the political structure has people in fighting against each other. It has the peasants, the lower 90%, the lower 80% of the income, in the U.S., the people that are actually working for a living, the actual backbone of the United States. They have those people fighting over limited resources. So there's only a certain number of affordable homes that are within driving distance of a place that you can work and be able to afford a home, right? And so those people are all struggling for those resources, while the people that control everything, I mean, they have, three houses, and one of them is a 4,000 square foot mansion on a golf course in a ski town. Type thing. And I live in that area, so I see it all the time. And so how I got started on this long tirade here was that it is not necessarily somehow racist or hateful or whatever to notice that a certain culture or group or whatever it is behaving a certain way. We use statistics and data for all sorts of things, from obviously how we develop medical treatments, to obviously, how we run governments. And so we can look at things like statistics, or we can look around us and see things that are happening, and we can notice. So there's another piece of that. I have spent most of my adult life, and even my childhood, I grew up in the hood. So I've been around, people of color, or immigrants, Mexican, I'm from Minnesota, so Asian, Somali, all of those things are in play, whoever they are. There should not be, on the left, there shouldn't be a racial argument to say that we have to ignore his race, and so we have to ignore the thing happened at all. And then we have to have GoFundMes and all of these other things, because there has to always be some sort of racial argument made. And on the right, it's the same problem, the far right. They would go say, oh, it's just another black. Look at the black crime statistics. Look at this. Look at that. None of them, on the left or the right, are actually going to address the issue. They're going to throw money and lawyers and BS at it. And if, because of this paradigm that we're talking about here, if a person of color ends up on the jury, there's a chance this person might even get off, because those people let their in-group off, whether they're guilty or not. You can hang a jury just based on the fact that there's a person in there that doesn't want to see another fellow person of color go down. And that's not justice. We don't have justice in our system. I can tell you that so many examples because they let all of it happen. They're making us chase squirrels again with these romantic fantasies. They're making us chase squirrels. That's what they really did, was they weaponized on both the left and the right. They weaponized different pieces of what is essentially just a romantic fantasy. And by weaponizing it in your phone and making you feel angry or sad or like a victim, showing you that you're a victim for whatever reason, in group, all this in group, out group stuff. It's how they can get people to believe in the flat earth with a 30-second long little TikTok video. It's because they've latched on to your feelings system, and that's not your rational brain. The rational brain, the one that uses parsimony, the one that says, no, wait, hang on a second here, in principle, murder is wrong. It's very wrong. We watched this person do it, and we should probably do something about it so that it's severe enough so that other people see it and it deters them from doing it. And at a minimum, it should be severe enough that it deters this person from ever doing it again. Where has compassion gotten the left and or the right on any of these issues at all whatsoever? And that's another thing. This is where you go full circle. What is the right doing? The right's calling for martial law in the cities. They're saying that we should have a National Guardsman sitting over on the buses and trains to go stop things like this from happening. They're supporting Trump. If you're a true MAGA, you support Trump whether or not he goes after pedophiles. He might let the Epstein stuff go and tell you that none of that matters. But he'll go crack skulls with the National Guard. And Alex Jones, of all people, will essentially back Donald Trump, going to clean up the streets with what is going to amount to martial law. Gangs in New York are talking about they're going to go. I saw some guy claiming he was from the Latin Kings, talking about they're going to go fight the National Guard troops when they show up in there. This is madness. And if we don't step out of these delusions, we're never going to solve the problem, because nobody can even properly identify the problem because there's no parsimony. Because what is moral in the moment, it's as illusory as a flame in the wind. There's nothing you can hold on to there. Seen another one just recently come up where, and this is just another one where you can't say, that it was this color person and a that color victim or whatever it was. But let's just say that a babysitter went and beat the crap out of a baby. First day nightmare as boy is left bruised and battered by classmate. Then parents watch the footage. He was beaten by a black worker at the daycare. He was a little white kid. And he's beat up. And it's just tragic. And the deal is we need to be able to talk about it. We have to be able to talk about it. Black people need to be able to talk to black people and say, hey, look, this type of behavior obviously isn't acceptable. Running around, being illiterate, doing all this gangbanger stuff, all of it, taking over the city streets, none of it is acceptable. It's not acceptable to most of us. It's just a small percentage. Is it all black people? No. But the ones that are doing it are so out there and so pervasive and so violent that you can't help but notice it. And the problem is that it was let happen. Believe me, the government in all sectors, left, right, it doesn't matter. If they're involved in the system wants this chaos. They are getting exactly what they want. People are begging for martial law and gun control. On the right, these are the people that would have fought vehemently against martial law and gun control. Alex Jones made a brand talking about gun control and martial law. And now he's like, well, we need to do something. Actually, he's like, well, we need to do something about these trans shooters with the whatevers in the who now, because the gay frogs. You know. People need to stop acting like it wasn't intentional. It's obviously intentional. Just look at the results. And history is replete with examples. Check out What If Alt Hist. He's got a bunch of great info on this. Essentially, anybody that had ever studied history, and you would hope that there's people in charge of your government that have studied history in any capacity. But there's people employed by your government, not just like politicians, etc., whatever, but the government itself tries to employ some of the smartest people to know things and to figure things out and to trend things and to war game things and to know and to act like it wasn't intentional that they debased the money and that you're now entering some sort of Weimar stuff, that it wasn't intentional that they toyed with interest rates, that it wasn't intentional that they spent trillions of dollars in Iraq and Afghanistan. And I would ask anybody in the comments, please tell me, what benefit did the United States receive from spending any money in Iraq or Afghanistan? Ever. All the way back to the 1980s. We were fighting Russia, using Russia to fight Afghanistan in the 1980s. Osama bin Laden was like a CIA asset. 9/11, I was there, man. I was a first responder to the Pentagon on 9/11. I held the plane parts and the body parts in my hand. I know for sure it was a commercial airplane. The fact it was a commercial airplane should tell you that it was a conspiracy. There's no way commercial airplanes are flying around hijacked for like an hour and a half being used to crash into buildings without being intercepted and blown out of the sky. There's like standard operating procedures for that. The people I know said that they would have had to throw every standard operating procedure out the window that day. Why? Well, because as soon as you lose transponder, you intercept. As soon as you lose radio, you intercept. I think it was Muhammad Atta. I'd have to go double check, but one of those guys, maybe even two of them, if I remember right, in two different airplanes, when they got onto the intercom to tell the plane that it was hijacked and they had control of the airplane and everybody to be calm, they actually transponded it to the radio tower. So that would have been the moment pretty much that the plane was taken over. Within moments, the plane taken over. And how would they have the knowledge to turn the transponders off in the airplane at all? That's not going to be common knowledge. That's not something just anybody would know how to do, where to do it, etc. So you don't need a grand conspiracy. They didn't have to go hide 4 airplanes and not crash them into the buildings in front of everybody's eyes. No, it'd be much easier to just use those airplanes, kill all the witnesses, kill everybody involved, right? And then just fabricate your story thereafter. There's no reason to use missiles or any fancy highfalutin stuff. I don't even know that they needed to demo the buildings. That might not have even been intentional for them to be injured that badly. That might have just been something that happened because of the way the buildings are built. I've seen some engineering on that was pretty convincing. So we could talk more about any of that. Anything in here that you guys want me to talk about more, if you like hearing my opinions on any of it. But history just shows that really what we're dealing with here is not just criminal negligence. It's not like the people in charge somehow just aren't smart enough to figure it out. And it's also doesn't require that there's like a secret cabal of the Illuminati. It's a real issue that they're want more power, and the easiest way to do it is to manipulate people in exactly the way that they have been. Rile them up so that the little people fight against each other, so that the peasant blacks fight against the peasant whites, fight against the peasant Mexicans, fight against. And it's all just fighting against each other. And they use all of that fighting, all of that chaos to never solve anything. Very simply, all we needed to ever do was punish people that were doing wrong. The problem is that we watch white collar crime go unpunished. We watch everybody involved with the Epstein thing go unpunished. We hear about Hillary Clinton and her emails and we're going to get her, and they go unpunished. That list is endless. In fact, not only do people end up going unpunished, but you'll find they often get pardons. So that's just in the white collar realm. You can push that all the way down to the guy that let out of jail, whatever it was, 14 times, released 14 times, and then he went to go on to stab this girl recently, right? We're not punishing anybody. The Indian truck driver might end up just getting deported, right? Well, deportation for killing 3 Americans, I mean, that's not punishment, right? There's no, all of these slap on the wrist. I can think of in my community, story time, in my community, 3 kids, high school age. There was some beef between a girl and 2 other kids. She got her boyfriend and his friend involved. She drove them a half-hour drive from where they were and where they lived with weapons, baseball bat and a knife. One kid had the baseball bat, one had the knife. They went to go encounter with this, other individual. The one that was the target ended up being stabbed to death. The other kid with the baseball bat just recently. So understand, kid with the baseball bat is at a minimum an accessory to murder. He went over there to go do the dirt. He had a deadly weapon, and he was involved in assault himself with a deadly weapon, and it was premeditated. They had a half hour not to do it. So you think you brought weapons, you got in the car, you went and did it, and the girl was filming it. So they knew exactly what they were doing. The kid with the baseball bat just got off with 2 years of probation. Here in the state that I live in, a illegal immigrant was driving and killed driving illegally, no insurance, killed a woman. He was just let out free. I think he got something like 4 years of probation. So this is not punishment. This goes back to this parsimony thing. This goes back to principles. Okay, somehow we have gotten tied into this romantic fantasy. I hate saying it over and over again, but it really is, where we're going to somehow be nice to these criminals and these downtrodden, and we're going to tell these stories for why they're that way. And instead of actually addressing the societal issues, okay, so we can say, like, oh, they come from a really bad environment. Okay, what are we going to do to clean up the environment? Well, first how we should clean up the environment is by removing the people from it that are making it bad. Oh, no, we can't do that because we have to, again, that just goes in a like never ending circle. And you can get the people on the right to follow that because they have this idea, they have this heroic myth where they believe that people can just overcome themselves. And so we just slip further and further, and things get worse and worse. And because every person is involved in this delusion where they can change what they believe based on what they feel in the moment, which can be manipulated by something as simple as a 10-second long TikTok. Right? So we must return to parsimony, punishment, all of these things. We have to say, hey, I mean, there was a time where we didn't have high quality video in the cab with the truck driver, the Indian truck driver, and exterior cameras and everything else that caught the entire thing happening in high definition. Okay, we're not going to go in there and be able to say it was somebody else where that didn't happen, that you didn't, there's no other claims there. It's the same thing with this stabbing that happened on the public transportation. It's that goes on and on. Even something as simple as, say, George Floyd. Okay, the man was clearly jacked. He was clearly a big guy that, while may not have been running away, wanton, beating up cops resisting arrest, he definitely wasn't making anything easy for those officers. Right. And so we can't just say, like, well, I mean, obviously, this is an effect of drugs, lifestyle, choices, whatever. Nope, nope, nope. We have to go and throw Derek Chauvin in jail. And I'm not saying that he shouldn't have been punished, right? But again, this is where we have some sort of like weird moral, right, dilemma, and then the punishment that we give the other person who doesn't even deserve it. This is happening over in England. You'll be punished for posting a meme that gives someone anxiety online, right? They've taken away your free speech over there. And that's just it. This left, right, doesn't matter what ideology it is that these people have. Why do we end up at the same place where it ends up just becoming more authoritarian, where liberal used to mean like liberal, like say what you want, do what you want. That was supposed to be what pride and all of those, taking those words back, was because that was what it was supposed to be about. And it's no longer about say what you want, do what you want. It's say what I want you to say and do what we allow within the confines. And that's why when people look around, they're like, what the heck is going on? Why is everything so broken? And they just can't put their finger on it. They just can't quite figure it out. The real issue is that, as I said, they knew from a historical, philosophical, research context, you better believe that there are white papers on white papers that told you that if you let crime go, that it was going to get out of control. And it told you that people were going to beg for authoritarianism in order to be able to solve it. I predicted this on the Facebook, in my groups, friends groups, whatever, when everybody was kind of started arguing coming into the Trump cycle in 2016, I was a Ron Paul guy. And I said, if you guys don't figure this out, it is going to swing so far to the right that you're going to have like brown shirts in the streets. And that is exactly what you got. People are now begging for order. And the deal is the people in charge voted for it knowingly. Go look up the statistics. They only pass like 8 or 10% of any laws or statutes or bills or whatever it is. Only gets passed like 10% of the time, no matter how popular it is. So if it's 100% popularity, it still will only pass 10% of the time. If it's 0% popularity, it will still pass 10% of the time. That means that they're actually going to go pass what they want to pass, what benefits them. It benefits people on the left to virtue signal and pass welfare and Obamacare and all of those things. But Obamacare was a joke. That was a nightmare. It tripled the cost, the monthly cost of healthcare, and put a huge deductible on the front of that healthcare so that you had to even pay into your deductible before you were able to use your healthcare. I've been around just long enough, and I'm not that old, to tell you that it wasn't always that way. There was zero deductible healthcare for not a ton of money for a family prior to Obamacare coming around. The thing was they needed to go give it away to a subset of people, and that subset of people wasn't very healthy. That subset of people, they had to go take away. Why do you think, how much money, I would wonder how much money it was, the difference was being spent on SNAP on things like sugar and, bagged food like Doritos and things like that, right? So they voted for it, not just the left, the right voted for it too. You better believe the right was fine spending trillions of dollars. You have to understand how much money trillions of dollars bombing the Middle East was and what they could have done here at home with that. You were robbed. They went into trillions of dollars of debt in your name while you paid taxes. Imagine paying for a product. You think you've paid for it in full. I went to the store, I paid for this product, I thought I paid for it in full, and then you find out that there's actually a back-end charge on your credit card for an unknown amount. That's what the federal government went and did on your dime. They went and took your tax dollars and they went 37 or whatever trillion dollars it is into debt. And they did it to go to war. They didn't do it to go fix homelessness because there's still homeless people in the streets. They didn't do it to clean up the streets. Those homeless people poop in the streets. They didn't do it for the war on drugs. There's still people taking drugs. Drugs are probably worse now in the country than they've been in a long time. They didn't do it for the poor or any of that stuff. Sure, there may have been some programs that kind of help the poor, but if you actually look at the net benefit of what was going on with those programs, it didn't actually serve the communities that they were trying to serve. You can watch this Netflix, I think, documentary. It might be on Netflix, called Pruitt-Igoe, where they go really into detail about how when they went and came up with these, socialist housing blocks here in the U.S., and they went to go give housing away, and they had these kind of first little, Section 8 type programs where they were going to have, rent restricted housing blocks. Look at how all of those turned out, but specifically that was where like pimp culture and all that came from. A specific story I remember from that was they would go find, say, a family of 12 that actually had an intact household, husband, wife, down in the South, in Mississippi, and they were maybe, whatever they call those crop share, farmers or whatever, and they'd say, well, hey, we can go, put you in, Michigan or wherever it is, and we'll give you, this housing, and it'll be, X amount of dollars, and you'll be able to, afford it, and have all these other benefits, for your kids and everything, and better opportunities. And so that was what they sold them. But the condition was that there couldn't be any working age males in those households. And so they would literally go move with like a family of 8. Mom by herself just became a single mom now with a family of 8 over in a housing block. And the father would, be left behind over in Mississippi or whatever it was. And so that was where pimp culture actually came from. And that was what actually kind of destroyed those communities. When you have, access to free money for single parenthood, and there's an actually incentive to get, more housing, more money, more of those things, without any incentive to figure it out, then you have people on there for a lifetime. And the communities, obviously, that those people are in, where you've got 8 kids with, one parent raising them, and, pimp culture is growing up around it, and gangs, and then violence and everything else. That's what happens. It's just a logical conclusion, but we don't ever go address that. We don't ever go say, well, hey, like, just giving it away isn't working. What do we need to do? Education, spend so much money on education. Well, how have we not educated these people? Now, when I say these people, I don't just mean a certain subset of people. I mean 54% of America reads at below a 6th grade level. Think of how much money has been spent on K through 12 education in the United States of America. Everybody's got themselves a little high school diploma or a GED theoretically, and they don't read above a 6th grade level. So there's a real issue on all of those fronts, and all goes back to it was voted for by the people in charge. We need to stop pretending that the people in charge did not organize this, that they did not mean for this to happen, that we did not allow that they didn't vote for defunding police. Right? So that they didn't vote for these judges that are letting people free. That these aren't the policies that led us here intentionally. Everybody just wants to put their hands up in the air and act like, oh, well, you would not accept that answer from anybody like around you. You wouldn't accept that answer from your kid. You wouldn't accept that answer from your friend. You wouldn't accept that answer from, the guy washing your car. Well, yeah, I understand I charged you $150 for washing your car, but then on the back end, I went into debt on your credit card for an extra, $10,000. You wouldn't accept that behavior. You would hang the people that did it. That's the whole issue here is we need to address the thing. Does Congress need out? There's 500 and some members. Yes, every single one of them. How do we get them out? Well, we have a Nuremberg trial, and we figure out by dissecting very seriously voting records and how you became a multi-millionaire earning $200,000 a year in Congress in your lifetime. We need to go and address how Chelsea Clinton was paying for houses with USAID money. We need to go address who was selling secrets or whatever it is. All of these things, there needs to be a Nuremberg. And it's not for Nuremberg, we're going to go figure out how many, I don't know, Jewish people died, whatever it is. No, we're going to go figure out the receipts. We're going to figure out the receipts for each of them. And if we vote for it and it's legal, capital punishment is legal, then we can just vote for to, feed them into the wood chipper or whatever it is. I'm not advocating for violence or anything like that, obviously, but figuratively, right? We need to have very severe and specific punishment, and it's not going to be spending whatever it is, thousands, tens of thousands of dollars a year keeping prisoners in where there's endless appeals and all of these things. It's like, no, we know you did it. We're now beyond you do the crime, you do the time. It's like, there is a obvious problem on many fronts with all kinds of criminality, and the people in charge that are not enforcing, that are harboring, that are doing all of those things. Okay. While education is worse in the US now than it was, and I think the cost is up like 1,000%. Same thing with housing. It's 1,000% up, but you're not getting more house. Like, it's 1,000% more for the same 1,000 square foot house as a 1,000 square foot house was. So you're not getting anything more for the 1,000%. So the real thing people need to wrap their heads around is that things have gotten incredibly expensive, but have given you no more value. In fact, the value proposition is probably lower. You're probably getting less value than you would have gotten before for less money. Housing is unobtainable, but a huge percentage, you'd have to look it up on Zillow, of houses actually sit vacant. And that's because the investment class has credit to draw on, so they can go buy several homes and then they can cash flow them through rentals or Airbnb, while you'll never own one. You have street drugs like fentanyl, etc., on the streets, to the point where you've got Skid Row is no longer just a row, it's skid an entire swath of a city, right? These were all allowed to happen. They've been going on for a very long time. And if people are just going to bring up Alex Jones again, if we're just going to say, well, all we need to do is just get these. It hurts my voice. How do you talk like that, Alex? What we really need to do is get the military out there in these streets to go clean up all of these tents and the bums, and that's the real problem. No, the real problem is how do we ever let it happen? We need to go clean up the people that let it happen. So, like, I am all for cleaning up the streets, but it is just going to happen again if we don't go figure out how we got people in the streets. This is like the romantic fantasy over here. If I feel better because I cleaned it up today, there's less crime today. I have a news story for my 30-second flash that I can show you that we cleaned up these tents. Well, where did they go? The bums are just a couple streets down, probably borrowing money. So that, or not borrowing, but panhandling or whatever, getting money so that they can go buy another tent, so they can go set it up somewhere that's a little bit more discreet. Don't think that that's not what's happening. It's not like they somehow went and built housing for them or gave them an out. They just moved them out of the view of that camera angle. Because it's just to make you feel better. That's everything that we've talked about over here. is to make so we can feel better in the moment. I feel better because I got Obamacare. Oh, well, that didn't work out. I feel better because I elected a black president, and then I got Obamacare, and then now I definitely don't feel good about it. And that's the thing. You see it all day now. There's TikToks everywhere of people like, oh, I pay for dental insurance, but they just told me that my $10,000 dental bill I have to pay for out of pocket. It's not covered by my dental insurance. So what have I been paying for dental insurance for my whole life for? You could extend that question all the way down. If we allowed this much rampant violence and gang culture and fentanyl and homelessness and despair, and they shut everything down for the seasonal flu. They made everybody go take a medical treatment and put on masks and participate by all of these crazy rules. And at the end of the day, again, you have to step back and you have to look at results. You have to have a little bit of parsimony here, right? You have to be like, okay, what if this is the result? How did we get there? Sure, some of that is to assume that people just aren't smart enough. Okay, that's fine. But it isn't that simple. You better believe they knew shutting down the economy was not going to be good for people, that locking people up was not going to be good for people. They had to have known that. They had to have known that the threat of losing your home because you lost your job and you're on unemployment now, and unemployment takes 3 months to go through. They had to know that all of that was going to be a problem, and they knew it before they did it. Let's stop lying to ourselves. It's just, Ron Paul was right. You know, anything that the government gives to you by rote, because now they're taking away SNAP and they're taking away Section 8 and they're taking away all that stuff. He said, and if they can give it to you, they can take it away. And it's the same thing with your taxes. 100% of the money that you have might as well be the government, because through the ability to print money and devalue it, so the money's sitting in your hand, they can just make it worth less by printing more of it, which they've done. We're now in an issue where the reason that they have a hard time lowering interest rates is because nobody will buy our debt at rates lower than inflation. And inflation is sky high. And like Donald Trump is firing all these people because he's saying that the numbers are false. Well, some of the biggest false numbers that they have in there, because they're not adjusted, is like GDP, inflation, all of those things. You right now have an issue in the economy where there's a very small sector in percent, the asset class, the tech class, the tech stock, tech bubble that's going on, AI, right? So between, say, like AI and the people buying and selling land and housing and assets like that, those are things that are moving in the top 10% of the, like, that would be like 80% of the economy, right, would be moving right now by the top 10% of, owners and spenders and people with wealth. That's not your average everyday person spending that's holding up GDP. The stock market right now is a prime example. I think there's 5 tech stocks that are holding up, propping up all of the benefits that the S&P has had. So the S&P looks like it's booming. It's actually not. There's just 5 tech stocks that are propping the entire thing up. AI. AI now, like AI spending, corporate AI spending is now more than consumer spending. So the dollars that you spend going out every day There's now more money being spent in the economy, in the American economy, on AI by corporations. So as they're gearing up, they're building all of these, facilities, and we need more gigafactories, et cetera, et cetera. So as they're gearing all of that up, they're spending a tremendous amount of money. What's going on is that to anybody in both housing and it's a bubble. It's a huge, giant asset bubble that you're not involved in. Most people don't own, 8 houses. Most people don't own enough Nvidia for it to matter, or Bitcoin for that matter, for it to matter. And so everything is a scam. Insurance is a scam. Licensing is essentially a scam. So if white collar crime is a thing, I go pay for licensing, insurance, permitting, maybe I pull some credit, I've got to pay the taxes, I've got health insurance, I've got all these other things that are required in order to, say, hop into the business realm, right? And again, prime example just from my own life. Say you get into one of your clients owes you money. Well, the insurance isn't going to collect my money for me. The licensing isn't going to collect my money for me. The permitting isn't going to collect my money for me. I pulled credit in order to be able to go do it. So now somebody owes me money and I owe a creditor, right? So that is as big of a negative, it's a double negative on that one. You're going to owe taxes, right? You're still going to have to go pay your taxes. So even though you don't get paid, and the taxes is not going to get you your money back, right? So like if a person owes me money for a completed project, you would think somewhere in there, there would be a provision for me, the person who paid for all of these things and who was compliant and passed my inspections and completed the work and it's occupied by the client. You would think that if their only reason for not paying me is that they don't want to pay me, that somewhere in there, one of those things that I listed, would have some sort of recourse or protection, or I would be able to buy insurance that would be able to do it. Your only insurance is to get a lawyer, and the lawyer is just going to eat up and cost money. And so, again, that's actually almost like the taxes and the permit. You're paying for things, you're going to pay for a lawyer, and you're never going to get any result out of it. Guy owes you $60,000, lawyer tells you it's a $30,000 retainer. Well, he owes you $60,000, $30,000 retainer. You're $90,000 in the wrong direction before you even start. That's how bad tort is. Laws, jurisdiction, enforcement, all of that stuff is kind of on the hip. You could have I have in writing via text message, which is supposed to be admissible, that a partner stole $100,000. They went and wrote $100,000 in discrepancy. There's a $100,000 discrepancy. Exactly was the answer. Okay, so yeah, there's a $100,000 discrepancy. It means you stole that money. They're not saying they didn't. They said exactly was the answer to that. Now you would think you would be able to go pull that for theft, right? Simple. They stole $100,000. It went. It's check fraud. It's whatever. I have all of this that should show that that's that. No, they won't take it because they're a business or whatever it is. No, you're going to have to go settle it in court. And it's like, no, this person admitted to stealing $100,000. They stole $100,000. We don't have it. They didn't go pay the rent. They didn't go pay the anything. In fact, they stole the rent, right? If somebody went up in your house and stole your rent money that you had sitting in a jar, and you caught them red-handed, and they sent you a text message back that said exactly, would you be able to charge them with the crime? And no, that is the real problem. Is they want to go enforce codes on how you can build your house and taxes for how you need to pay for all of the things, and they gotta go. That's what they'll enforce. They'll make sure that your car has got its registration and its insurance, and that you got your seatbelt on, and that you're not driving 5 miles an hour over the speed limit. But if you got somebody who just stole $100,000 from you red-handed, they're going to punt it over and make it a civil matter. And that goes all the way up. That's where the Epstein corruption is. That's where you can see it in plain sight, right? We're just not going to do anything to these people. We know that Joe Biden was mentally incompetent and there was all kinds of skullduggery going on. We know that Hillary Clinton and all of those people, we know, okay, but nothing ever happens. Nothing ever happens. You're years and years and years into this. This is Trump's second term around, okay? Arrests should be flying, but they don't, and because it's all a scam. The only thing they want is more money and more power, and they don't care how bad the streets are where you live in the city because they don't even drive themselves through the city. They got a private driver. They've got a chauffeur. They don't take public transportation. They're not over messing around in Skid Row. Supposed to close these things with some type of like hope. How you fix it. Call to action. I think the call to action is we need to talk about it. I think we need to actually sit here and we need to analyze all of our delusions, all of our fantasies. We need to understand where we're making decisions that we could base on rationality and basing them on feelings, doing and saying things because they make us feel better in the moment. Feelings are fleeting. Feelings now. You know, if we just went by our feelings, nothing would ever happen. It doesn't feel good to build a house. You know, blood, sweat, and tears goes into that. Every single contractor that came in there went and banged something, scraped his hand on something, whatever it was, went and dealt with insulation, all of it. None of it was fun. Breathed in dust. None of it. If all we did, if all everybody really did, and that's where your society is right now and why everything is so messed up. If all everybody really did was just in the moment, momentary self-interest, you would have the society you have today. For some reason, some guy who's been out of jail 14 times would just for no reason at all stand up on a bus and stab a bitch in the neck. And nobody would talk about what we were going to do to prevent it from happening ever again. Well, number one, that person just needs to not walk the face of the earth anymore. Plain and simple. But people don't have the stomach for that. When you go to war, they find that some big percent, I want to say something like 70% of people, they shoot over the head of the enemy. You know, intentionally, unintentionally, whatever it is, somewhere on a fine line there. It's because it's really hard to kill a person. When you're in war, you need to have a psychopath. You know, if you've ever seen Full Metal Jacket, you know, Wolf Mother, you need that guy. You know, the guy on the helicopter. Get some. You know, that's the guy you actually need making sure. But you don't want to let that guy out of jail 14 times in society. If you have any other topics that you would like me to dissect and show you where everyone's wrong, including me. You know, I figured this out. I had to figure out my problem, my romantic fantasies, my bullshit. Where am I living? What am I doing? Brings us back to where we started. I'm trying to figure out how to leave town, sell all my stuff, get a job. You know, it's a big transition. And all we can do is keep on keeping on, man.
Only you can make the simulation rad again. Thanks for watching.